last week. What was that one? Base times height. So your base being here, your height being not one of the sides of the figure necessarily, right? Area of a trapezoid. Okay, so the formula, the way the book is going to give it to you, the way I'm going to give it to you on the formula sheet that you work with is 1/2 times the height times base 1 plus base 2. The way we wrote it up there was base 1 plus base 2 times the height times 1/2. It doesn't matter the order you do it in. Just matters that you get all the pieces of it. But here is how it should look. This would be base 1 and base 2. Base 1 and base 2 are interchangeable. It doesn't matter which one is which. Your height has to be perpendicular. So this would be my height, and you would just be plugging in values like that. Any questions on a trapezoid before we move on? We're going to do a problem of each of these just to make sure you're good, but I want to give you the formulas first. Okay, rhombus. Do you remember what the formula was for a rhombus?
Yes. So you multiply the diagonals, and then you split them in half.
Right. So it's going to be 1/2 times diagonal 1 times diagonal 2. Okay. Diagonal 1 being the blue, for instance, diagonal 2 being the red. And just the place that I see people often make mistakes with this is they'll call like this piece diagonal 1 and that piece diagonal 2, and that does not work. Okay. The diagonal is the whole thing. So don't take half of it. Take the whole diagonal times the whole diagonal. Okay. So if we call this diagonal 1, then this would be diagonal 2. Okay. And then kite. What's the formula for a kite? The same thing. So it's area equals 1/2 times diagonal 1 times diagonal 2. And again, your diagonals go the whole way. So if this is diagonal 1, then diagonal 2 would be this one here. Okay. Any questions on that? Okay, one thing that I want to brush up on, do you remember 45, 45, 90, and 30, 60, 90 fairly well? You're going to see that quite a bit in these next few lessons. So I want to just brush up on that because if you don't remember it, that makes these really hard. So in a 45, 45, 90, if this is L, then what is this side? That is L also, right? It's isosceles in a 45, 45, 90. And then what's the hypotenuse? L rad 2, okay? If you have forgotten all of that, refamiliarize yourself a bit. In a 30, 60, 90, if this is L, what is this longer leg? That's L rad 3. And then the hypotenuse is 2L. Okay, so you're going to be using that quite a bit. I'll show you in just a minute one example of where you're going to use that. All right, here's an example for you. Actually, we'll do that one right now. Let's say we have this shape. This is 60, and sometimes they'll put that height in for you, and sometimes they won't. Don't let that throw you off. You may always put the height in right there, okay? Because when you do, it's going to make a 30, 60, 90 triangle for you, which is quite helpful. So if I tell you this side is 5 meters, this side is 7 meters, and I want to know the area of that trapezoid. Now, some of you are going to be tempted to turn this into a square or a rectangle and a triangle, which is okay. There's nothing wrong with that if you can do it that way. Sometimes you won't have the right information to do it that way very easily. The whole point is a trapezoid formula is quicker and simpler to do it that way. So using the trapezoid formula here, area equals 1/2 times the height times base 1 plus base 2. Do you know H right now? No. Do you know B1?
Yes.
Do you know B2?
Yes.
Yes. What are B1 and B2?
5 and 7.
5 and 7. Your bases are always the two that are parallel. Okay, so the 5 and the 7 are going to go here and here. We need to figure out what H is. So Does anyone see a way that you can do that right now? Do you know this length? That would be 2. If the whole thing here is 5, then this would be 5 also. So this would have to be 2 to add up to 7. Now, you have a 30, 60, 90 triangle with a shorter leg of 2. So what is your height right now? 2 rad 3. Okay, so when you plug this in, you get 1/2 times 2 rad 3 times 5 plus 7. And from here, just be careful with your math. Think PEMDAS, right? Parentheses first. So we got to add this together. 1/2 times 2 rad 3 times 12. Okay, and now you can just multiply everything except for the radical. Okay, we're going to leave the radical be. So you're going to go 1/2 times 2 times 12 would be 12. Oops. So you get 12, and then you're just going to multiply by the rad 3. We're going to leave it in simplest radical form. How do you label area? Squared, meters squared. So you would get 12 rad 3 square meters. Okay. How about this one? Side note, when you draw a kite, it's always easier to draw a kite with the diagonals first drawn in and then draw the sides from there. So if you have trouble drawing kites, start by drawing diagonals. Although I did not prove that with the way I just drew this one. Okay, so let's say I tell you that this is 2 meters, 3 meters, 3 meters, and 5. I did not draw this to scale, sorry, and 5 meters. If I want to find the area of the kite, remember it's area equals 1/2 times diagonal 1 times diagonal 2. How long is one of your diagonals? What is it? 7. One of them is this line here, right, which would be the 5 and the 2 put together, so 7. What's the length of your other diagonal? 6, right? Add the 3 and 3 together. So you're going 1/2 times 7 times 6, which means your area is 21. And then don't forget to label it square meters. Okay. Questions on that? Okay, then last one here is a rhombus. And again, it's easiest if you draw your diagonals first, I would say. So if this is my rhombus, what do you know about the diagonals of a rhombus? They're not the same. They bisect each other, and they are what? Perpendicular, okay? So when you see a rhombus, this is going to be 90 degrees every time. Same for what other figure? What other figure has a kite, has perpendicular diagonals, okay? So if this is our setup, and I tell you that this is 15 centimeters, and this is 12 centimeters, and I want to know the area of that rhombus, think about what you need. Area of a rhombus is what formula? 1/2 diagonal 1 times diagonal 2, okay? So we need to know our diagonals, which means we need to know this length. Does anyone know that length? 24, right? Because the diagonals bisect each other. So this is going to be 12 also. It's the other one that people tend to have a difficult time finding. Does anyone see a way that you could find it? I'm really impressed right now. The other diagonal. So we're trying to find this diagonal now.
You have the hypotenuse.
Nope.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Either one of you.
Because it's a right triangle.
It's a right triangle, so if you do what?
It's like c squared minus a squared equals b squared.
Right, so a squared plus b squared equals c squared, Pythagorean theorem, right? If we call this x, then we would say x squared plus 12 squared has to equal 15 squared. So take away the 15 squared. take away the 12 squared, sorry. 15 squared minus 12 squared is 369. So x squared, oh, I added them. It's not 369. Is 81. So x squared equals 81, and then we would square root that. So x is 9. What is the length of your diagonal? It's 18, right? If this is 9, then this is going to be 9 also. So when we go to plug this into the area formula, area equals 1/2. Diagonal 1 we said was 24. Diagonal 2 is 18. 9 plus 9. So 1/2 times 24 times 18 gets you 216 square centimeters. Okay. Any questions on that? Okay, let me give you one more problem just because we have the time and I want to make sure that the simple ones don't throw you off. First of all, what shape is this? That's a trapezoid. Okay, you got to make sure you know your shapes well here. So that you know which formula to use. Okay, so if this is my setup, can you plug this into a formula to find me the area? We said it's a trapezoid, so 1/2 times what? Remember the formula? 1/2 times the height times base 1 plus base 2. What's h? 242. Okay, so sometimes the height can be the side of the figure if it's perpendicular. So you'll go 1/2 times 242 times, and then you'll add the two bases together. So 250 plus 190, which you get a very large number for. Your area is 53,240, and it's area, so don't forget to square your units. So square miles. Good? Questions? Comments? Concerns? Accolades for my incredible acting skills? I mean, I had the force, so that's awesome.